Welcome to a special edition of the Erik Wait Whiskey Studies. For those who don't know me, I'm a certified sommelier with the Court of Master Sommeliers. I'm a certified French wine scholar at the Wine Scholar Guild. And while studying for the diploma from the Wine and Spirit Educational Trust, I got introduced to whiskey. So I spent about 20 years in wine, and then in April 2016, got introduced to whiskey because one of the units was on spirits. And that changed my journey in going to completely different direction. So since then, I have just been falling in love with whiskey, particularly Scotch whiskey. Traveled around, in Kentucky, Texas, here in the United States, and a couple trips over to Scotland to visit 40 distilleries. But I got to say, one of the highlights of my whiskey journey thus far, and continuing of my own education of whiskey, has been taking a course from the Edinburgh Whisky Academy. And so I am really, really thrilled to have a special guest on today and to share some more information about the school with you. So thank you much for coming on.
Hi, Erik.
Hi, how you doing? We're a little different in our time clocks. You're starting in the early afternoon. I'm here in the wee morning. But it's excellent to have you on. So why don't you introduce yourself and your background into Scotch whiskey?
Okay, yeah. Well, my name's Kirsty McKerrow. I'm founder of the Edinburgh Whisky Academy. And I had a very early start into the world of whiskey because I actually had my first whiskey tasting when I was 8. Because my father at that time was the CEO of Glenmorangie. And it was in the 80s when they were starting to introduce their wood finish range. And Daddy brought back these beautiful sample glasses with different samples of their first wood finish range. And me, my brother and my sister were all lined up to nose them individually and say what flavors we got. So I've sort of grown up around whiskey. I've also had a blending sort of family introduction because my mother's a McKinley, and the McKinleys were one of the very early blenders in the mid 1800s, and they started Glenmore Distillery in the late 1800s, and of course it was there, the McKinley's whiskey, that was found in Antarctica. I don't know if you remember, but they uncovered a whole load of, in 2007, I think it was, some New Zealand explorers found a load of McKinley's whiskey that had been ordered by Shackleton for his endurance expedition, and it was buried under the ice and still intact. So that's White and Mackay bought us out in sort of, I think, 1970s, and they've since released the Shackleton range. So whiskey's really been, so I've grown up around it and the stories, and so it's very much a part of our life.
So when did you start the school, and what sort of gave you the inspiration to start the Edinburgh Whisky Academy?
So, well, it was an unusual way into the industry because I was actually a paramedic, and I was working in Norway, having moved over from England to be with my husband. And we had recently moved to Sweden, had our first child, and the Swedish paramedic regulations were different to everywhere else. So I couldn't carry on with that. And I thought, well, hang on, I'm in Sweden, which is such a passionate whiskey country. And we were up in a ski town, and I love whiskey. I've grown up around it. So I set up a whiskey consultancy. And I was very lucky. It was mainly for conferences and ski groups and stuff like that. But I was very lucky in that one of the people who came to one of my tastings was a few weeks later down in Stockholm having an interview with Moet Hennessy when they were looking for a brand ambassador for Glenmorangie and Ardbeg. So that's how I got into the industry professionally, because I then became their brand ambassador for Scandinavia, which was super. So that was a really fun role, great meeting people, really superb introduction to the industry. But it was also during that time that I got the inspiration for a whiskey academy, because I had received really good brand training, but my underlying knowledge wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. And I searched the market for courses that suited my needs. and I didn't want to do the general certificate of brewing and distilling because that was too involved, and it was more on the distillation side. So I thought, well, hang on, I'm going to create this academy. And so when we came back to Scotland, I started setting up the Edinburgh Whisky Academy.
So of course, it's not just you teaching; you have some other
I don't
as well.
That was
quite impressive.
Yeah. So no, that was a fundamental sort of difference that I wanted with this Whisky Academy. Is I've never worked in a distillery. I have a great family background and a huge passion for whiskey, but I haven't actually done that job. So it was really paramount that our teachers have done the job that they're teaching about. And so, yeah, we have a really great pool of teachers. And I think the course that you came on, you had Vic, who has been with us since the beginning, incredible, over 22 years experience in the industry, and, knows so much about production. On the other course, the lead teacher for that is Gordon Steele, who is the ex-director of the Scotch Whisky Research Institute and is a consultant on a couple of key whisky brands. So, we have a really professional pool of now independent consultants, but they've all done the job initially. So you get that added benefit of getting their insight and knowledge from their day-to-day experience. And also, another point that was crucial to me was that it was certified. It has to be a credible course, and so we are certified. Our sort of governing examining body is the Scottish Qualifications Authority. So we're a certified centre for whisky education, and all of our courses are individually certified as well, which is a very rigorous process. We're audited every year like they would do a school. But it basically guarantees the candidates the highest standard of education, that we are continually trying to improve our learning materials, that all of our teachers are actually qualified to teach the subjects that they're doing. So it gives the candidate that extra level of security.
So you have two ways of taking courses from the Edinburgh Whisky Academy. There is the in-person courses with the instructor, which I really, really enjoyed. Not only the setting, it's an absolutely beautiful setting, but also be able to engage with someone and really go quite deep and be able to ask questions. And of course, there's a lovely meals, and when you arrive, there's a treat there, a bacon roll, if I recall correctly. Yeah. Lovely lunch, and love tasting whiskeys and part of the exam. But I really like to be able to have engagement with someone who's actually worked in the industry, not just someone who maybe more like myself. Most of my experience has been in wine or in doing, YouTube or something like that. But someone who's actually maybe be able to provide a little more background information, practical experience, rather than just might read from a textbook, which I thought was quite excellent.
No, exactly. And I think, the likes of your schools and stuff like that, they're fantastic. But it's almost, if you go back, you just have to make sure that people like you are fully, the knowledge you have is actually the knowledge that is true. And I think that was one of the things that really frustrated me when I was a brand ambassador and I was trying to improve my knowledge is you do search the internet and all these different views come up, and a lot of them, there's an angle behind it. It's maybe a marketing story, or they maybe represent a certain brand. And so it's just guaranteeing that this is actually the real production process, or this really is what happens. And that being teaching that knowledge allows people like you to then go on and make sure that, there are Scotch fans out there that are really getting the real knowledge that needs to be put out.
So I want to say for my viewers, people get into whiskey. Some, they just like the taste of it. Some of us get a little bit more geekier, some a little more nerdy. Some of us get a little bit carried away. But, it's a never-ending process of learning. And I find the more that I learn about whiskey, the more I enjoy it. But for every question that I get answered, I have more questions. And so, but I really, enjoy diving deeper into this subject and knowing why does this smell and taste the way that it does, and why is this different from that? And so this course, the courses that are available through the Edinburgh Whisky Academy, whether online or in person, yes, if you're going to go into the industry, if you're going to work in the service industry, say in a whiskey bar, in a restaurant that serves whiskeys, or you're going to work at a distillery, or in some other respects, or in a whiskey shop, it's excellent for that, but also just for us enthusiasts who just want to go a little nerdy. You just want to go a little geekier, and it isn't going to break the bank. If you look around at the various schools that are out there, this is also one of the most affordable as well. Now, if you're coming from the other side of the planet to get there, you're going to spend far more for your flight, in the hotel and that kind of thing. The school itself is super, super affordable. It's mostly the biggest expense is actually getting there. But if you're there in the UK or in Europe, which is short hop for you, it's very, very, very affordable. But you don't actually have to leave your house to get an education as well. Yeah. They're excellent. I mean, it's not just someone like me, a talking head in front of a camera going blah, 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 but really engaging and interactive material available through the website. So if you can't get away, and if you're from home, want to learn more, there are a number of different courses there. One of them, for example, is the Welcome to the Distillery, which currently, I know prices can change, currently going for around, 84 pounds?
So yeah, that's the introduction to whiskey certificate. Yeah, so it's £84 at the moment, and it is. So there were so many people that were emailing us last year saying, "I really want to come on your school," but obviously, like you say, the geographical distance is a limitation, and so we decided to create an online platform, and this. So this is an introductory course that covers much the same areas as the face-to-face diploma, but at a more sort of lighter level. And so it starts with the history of whiskey and Scotch. And then you have a module on the business, all about counterfeiting, tariffs, barriers for the future, things like that, exports. And then we go through to the raw materials, batch distillation, maturation. And there's also a bit on grain distillation and blending, as well as a module on bottling. So it really covers the whole lot. And it's like you say, it's really engaging. It's really interactive. And we teach a lot of the industry, and we've had quite a few, senior brand ambassadors take it. And they're like, you just never stop learning. Of course, they know it all, but it's just another revision tool, or they forget something and this reminds them. So it's a really great sort of all-encompassing, engaging course.
And as I get older, I probably have forgotten more than I can remember. So it's always good to go back through it. But the other great thing about that is it's not just a matter of travel, it's a matter of time. And so you can do this at your own schedule, at your own time, at your own pace. If you need to pause, to go pour yourself another glass. But really, that course is less expensive than a lot of Scotch whiskeys.
Yeah, no.
The price of a bottle or less, you can take this really, really excellent course and really come away with, an in-depth understanding of the big picture and some details of understanding Scotch whiskey. So this is a course after I had finished the diploma in single malt Scotch. That was the one I reviewed before you posted it, correct?
Yeah,
okay. Exactly. Absolutely fantastic course. Really, really, really enjoyed it. And I liked the visual and how everything moves around and you clicking buttons and all that kind of a thing, that engagement, rather than you're not just sitting in front of a screen, just watching and listening. Really, really quite excellent.
And I think another thing about that course is if some of your fans are thinking of coming over to Scotland or coming back to Scotland, what really helps with this is, and like on the diploma course when you did the distillery tour, is it just puts everything in context. Because sometimes when you go on a distillery tour, there's so much information about that particular whiskey that you're taking on board, but the actual sort of sequence of the process, you get lost a bit because, it's all a bit here, there and everywhere. So it really lays it out in a very clear way so that then when you do go to the distilleries, you can properly take on board all their information because you know the fundamentals to start with.
Right. So you have two new courses that I think just come up with in the last year. One is on focus on flavor. What's that one about?
So this is an online module, which is, well, basically what we did was we developed another diploma after you joined us at the Academy, and which is called the Diploma in the Art of Tasting Whiskey, because your diploma was packed full with production knowledge. And we really wanted to focus on the flavor aspect, which in itself is a whole other course. So the Diploma in the Art of Tasting Whiskey is a really sensory focused. You go into olfactory, how the sense of smell interacts. And then you look at different aged whiskies, where in the process the more flavor can be originated or manipulated. And also, of course, the influence of oak. So from that, we then took, much like the Introduction to Whiskey certificate, a more accessible level of this standalone focus on flavor module. So it looks a lot about, it breaks down a flavor wheel and backtracks where the different parts of a flavor wheel are produced in the process. You can download your own flavor wheel, looks at the main areas of flavor origination, and obviously goes through raw materials, cut points, fermentation lengths, as well as then looking at, maturation and oak.
So in a sense, and it's a term I like to use, is it's like you learn how to retro-engineer your whiskey. So
totally.
How did this become what it is? That's all the background information as to okay, what part comes from oak, what part comes from the process of producing the whiskey, the distillation, fermentation, all that. What part comes from aging, what part, and then how does that all add up to what I have here in my glass?
Yeah.
So I haven't taken the course. But I'm already thinking, Erik, boom, I will take that course within the next week. So I haven't taken it yet, but I would really, really like to check that one out. So, and that one's very, very, very affordable. No, it sounds funny, to focus on flavor on an online course because you can't download.
No, you can't.
But you can always pour yourself a glass and sit down in front of your computer and take this course and learn why your whiskey tastes the way it does. So the another one you have is Introduction to the Olfactory System. Not the old factory, but olfactory in the nose, in the senses. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that one as well.
So that one's called Wake Up Your Whiskey Nose. And that is, again, taken from the Art of Tasting Whiskey diploma. And that looks at the anatomy and physiology of smell detection, which is your olfactory system. And it's fascinating how it interacts with your memory. And it's one of our most ancient senses. So it looks at that, how smell interacts with memory. We also have a lot of fun activities you can do, how to build up your own whiskey aroma memory. There's exercises to help you train. And the beauty of building your whiskey aroma memory is it's just practice. So it's totally achievable by everyone. And it is just practice smelling anything, getting that smell logged into your, memory. You recall it quickly every time you have a whiskey, write down what aromas you're getting, and you will slowly really develop that sense.
So, coming from a wine background, I trained with master sommeliers. Is a lot of people think, wow, you must have some special gift, some magic, where you can, take a glass of wine and go, oh, this is a, 1982 Chateau Haut-Brion, No. Most people, unless you've had an injury to your nose or you have a cold or allergies, most people, it's just about training. We're just not in the habit of correlating everything around us, all our experiences, with what goes into the glass.
Yeah.
So it's really about learning why our nose works the way it is, how our olfactory senses work, and then learning the practice of drawing these two things together. Again, sounds like it's a class I'll have to review. I haven't taken that one either. These are new classes that weren't available. So I'm going to have to check this one out as well. Now, you do have several in-person courses and another course available online. If someone really enjoys gin. I was really surprised when I was in Scotland last time how much buzz there was about gin. And talk about gin. And gin sort of works as it helps new distilleries. When you're starting a new distillery, there's several different ways you can go. You can either sit on your cask if you already have some money and wait for them to age to be ready, or produce another spirit or source from another distillery somehow. And some distilleries will produce gin, is bringing some money and income, but also then continue on as being also a whiskey producer and a gin producer. And when I was visiting, say, restaurants and bars and talk to people, I was really surprised how, because I don't pay much attention to gin, how popular it really is. And I would say particularly because cocktails is a much bigger category than actually, single malt scotch. We nerds, we like our single malt scotch. But gin is such a big and more popular category I really wasn't aware of. So tell me a little bit about the online gin course as well as the in-person gin course as well.
So the diploma in gin is taught at the Royal Botanic Gardens, which is fantastic because we have halfway through the day, you have a tour with one of the head botanists, Greg, who was actually involved in creating the celebratory Botanic Garden Edinburgh gin. So he takes you through all the botanicals in person in the hothouse and around the gardens, which is fantastic. And it's taught by Geraldine Coates, who really is our first lady of gin. She was the first one to sort of start gin tastings about 20 years ago. She started out with Charlie McLean in different fields. So she's got some great stories from back in the day, and she's so knowledgeable about gin. She's worked on creating recipes for numerous different gins, and so that goes through you have some pre-reading with that, which looks at the history of gin as well as the different definitions of gin, and then you go into distillation. You have the botanics tour, and then you have a blind tasting, and of course the assessment and the sensory parts. And
so I'm sorry. So the course I took, and I did a video on this and talked a little bit about this in another video, but it's worth covering it again. So I took the diploma in single malt scotch, which was absolutely fantastic, but you had some pre-course reading and studying to do before you take the class. And the one concern I have is some people, hey, we're going on vacation to Scotland. Let's go take this class. It'll be fun, yada, 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 yada. And people not thinking, no, this is a school. This is a serious class. And you might be extra nervous when it comes to, because there's an exam and you got to pass the exam. So there is some pre-course reading, some pre-course studying you need to do. Me personally, I would give yourself 6 months, but you could probably maybe a month leading into it. But to absorb the material, I highly, highly, highly recommend. So if you're going to take one of the in-person courses, I highly, 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 highly recommend doing the pre-course reading. But also, the Welcome to the Distillery course also covers some of the same pre-course reading material. So I would highly recommend, even before taking that course on single malt Scotch whiskey, take that Welcome to the Distillery course, which I think is also going to make you more excited. Wow, this is awesome. Now I'm really looking forward to taking an in-person course. So I would take the Welcome to the Distillery course and then be able to attend the in-person course as well. No,
exactly. But just on the Welcome to the Distillery is that once you've that's the welcome once you're in. It's called the Introduction to Whiskey Certificate on the website. I agree. I think it's a great supporting course and sort of prelude to the diploma.
So I've been to Scotland twice. I've visited 40 distilleries. I'm planning on going back. I've been everywhere except for like the northwestern islands. But I'll come into Glasgow, head over to Edinburgh before I head up north and northwest to visit distilleries and the lands up there. But you have another course called the Diploma in the Art of Tasting Whiskey. Which, if you're going to study art, I think that'd be the one I'd want to study. So tell me a little bit about that one as well.
That's, like I was saying, that's all about the flavor. So you have a pre-read, which is just for information, which is all about the multisensory experience. And it's written by Professor Charles Spence, who is really advanced in exploring this in both wine and whiskey. And that highlights how the situation you're in affects the flavor that you get, the type of glass. It's really interesting. And for anyone that does tastings, this is all for any brand ambassador or anything. This is a really great reference tool. So you have that as your pre-reading. It's just one day, this course, and you start in the morning with an odor recognition test, which is basically an industry sensory panel test. So, and going back to us mentioning about how it is just practice building up that memory, we had one candidate who scored in the 90s on the odor recognition test. And at that time, it was John Ramsey from the Glenrothers and Macallan, who was the lecturer for that course. And he has been in the industry since, I think he started in 71. So decades. And he had never, ever, and he's obviously chosen numerous sensory panels. He'd never seen anyone get that high a score. And it turned out that this candidate, Ricky, his mother was an aromatherapist. So he had grown up with all of these smells. And so it just highlights how it really is practice. But the course, so you spend the morning looking at the olfactory system. It's really interactive. Lots of examples about how you can influence someone else's perception of what they're tasting. And then after lunch, we go into the flavor origination, look in more detail at the areas in the production process where you can create and manipulate flavor before moving on to the influence of oak. And throughout it, you're tasting lots of new makes. We have different aged whiskies, different cask matured whiskies. And then at the end, you have a blind tasting where we do it in blue glasses, and it's just for fun. It's not assessed. It's just really fun to show that, you can be so easily misled by what you think you're tasting. And then, of course, there's the SQA assessment, which isn't as in-depth as your 2-day one, but it's still quite tough.
So I want to talk a little bit about the venue. So if you're coming from out of the country, you're coming from the United States. I mean, I love Scotland. I live here in California, but my heart is still in Scotland. I'm really, really looking forward to going back. Don't like flying so much, but I absolutely love Scotland. Driving on the other side of the road is a little bit challenging as well.
I know.
I was really in awe of the venue for the class. And there's a long drive in there. So students stay in Edinburgh. You stay at a hotel, and then there's a place where you meet up, and then you're picked up there, and then you drive. So tell me a little bit about the venue for the school as well.
Yeah, no, it's been, when I was creating the academy, I was looking at venues, and I obviously wanted it in the centre of Edinburgh, but all I could really afford was, a sort of bland corporate hotel room. And I thought, no, we need something that's much more emotive in keeping with learning about Scotch. So I looked further afield and and Arniston is perfect. So it's Arniston House. It's 10 miles south of Edinburgh. So like you say, the taxi takes you there, and it's a beautiful historic house. It provides the perfect learning environment because we have one room for the teaching, and then we have another room for eating, breaks, milling around. And when it comes to the assessment, it's super because in the eating room, we set up the whole sensory assessment. So you can go between the rooms as you do your assessment. It also has the added benefit that it's very close to Glenkinchie Distillery. Right. So, and at the end of day one on your course, you candidates go and we get a private tour with the teacher to walk through the distillery to really cement the learning that you've achieved that day.
Right, really enforces. So it's there's one thing looking at slides, reading a book or something like that, and hearing lectures. It's another thing to then actually walk through the process, not just with a tour guide, which you can kind of, but be able to go a little bit more in depth with the instructor. And be able to be a little bit more engaging and ask a lot of questions about the production process while they're at Glenkinchie, which I thought was probably Glenkinchie, not necessarily my favorite distillery, but I thought it was one of the best tours I ever had, just because of the instructor that we had with us. So it was absolutely fantastic. So I want to highly, highly, highly recommend anybody who's interested in learning more about whiskey, learning more even about gin, about Scotch whiskey, check out the Edinburgh Whisky Academy. I'm going to put a link in the description box down below. Take a look at it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me as an alumni, but also ask the school as well if you have any questions, if you have any concerns. But if you look around at other schools online and everything that's out there, this is not only, I think, one of the highest quality schools in terms of content, but the highest values as well. I had absolutely no problem paying for more classes there because they really, really are quite affordable. So I want to thank you very much for coming on, and hopefully people who've seen this video will come pay you a visit.
No, thank you. Thanks very much. And also worth future plans. We've got more courses coming out online. So we've got an Irish whiskey course, which is fascinating. Ooh. Yeah, so interesting. And
you feel like you're portraying Scotland by having an Irish whiskey class?
Not at all. It's a fantastic history, very similar to ours, but obviously with a slightly different middle bit. But so no, it's great. It's coming out. It's in development at the moment, and it's coming out hopefully in 2 months. And then we are in the process of putting some of our diploma courses online. They will obviously take longer to achieve, but so hopefully the geographical limitations don't need to be too much of a hindrance for much longer, and it will allow much larger audience to achieve the education that we want everyone to.
So currently right now, and in studying whiskey, learning about whiskey is a never-ending exploration. There are 3 areas that I'm sort of weak on at the moment: Japanese whiskey, Canadian whiskey, and Irish whiskey. Irish whiskey, and there's a whole renaissance going on now over in Ireland. So I'm planning on spending a week in Ireland and then heading back over to Scotland and then pay y'all a visit again over there. So in my journey, really, really looking forward to it. Sounds absolutely fantastic. Looking forward to it. So, any last words for my viewers? Anything about the school you want to let them know about?
Thanks so much for your kind words, and I'm really proud of what we've achieved. And I think it's great that people like you then go on to give tastings when you know the quality of what you're teaching your candidates is the highest quality, because that's what we're all about. We're just trying to share good quality, high standard, passionate whiskey education for everyone, because the more you know, and you can always learn more, the more you know, the more you appreciate Scotch and the whiskies, the worldwide whiskies. So so thank you so much for being so positive about it. And I'm really pleased that we've achieved our goal.
All righty. Well, thank you very much, and Slange.
Yes, Slanger. Thank you.